Shout out to the sponsors of the podcast, MonarchToken.io, the complete crypto solution. Monarch Wallet is now available for Android, iOS, and desktop devices today. Do you want to learn how to mine crypto? Well, all you have to do is visit cryptomining.tools for profitable crypto mining information today. The Divi Project, that is diviproject.org, your one-click solution for staking and masternodes. Earn cryptocurrency using social media platforms like SoMe.social, SOMEE.social, New Era Social Media. Get paid to write reviews, like reviews, comment on reviews. Visit bravocoin.com and get paid to review. Available for Android and iOS devices. bravocoin.com. CoinFlip, the world's best Bitcoin ATM. Better service, better fees. Better visit coinflip.tech today. Shout out to the sponsors of the podcast, MonarchToken.io. All right, we're live. Hey, how goes it? I am Ken Bozak, here to talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin accessories. And today I'm with my bro, Colin Cantrell of Nexus. How goes it, bro?
Going good, man. Thanks for finally getting me on.
Yeah, and I appreciate you scheduling the time to come on and talk about Nexus. And I have here, the topic, the universal blockchain concept and what Nexus is doing. So, but I mean, it's so fucking weird. You've been in this space so long, doing so much, but like, so humble, so low key, and it's weird to like introduce yourself to the audience. But I feel like people should already know you at this point. But for those that don't, maybe let them know a little bit about yourself, how maybe you got into crypto and what you're doing now in the industry with Nexus.
Yeah. So I mean, a little bit of background. I've been programming since I was about 11. Kind of got into crypto 2013, I believe. I mean, when I got into it, first I was kind of like, get the fuck out of here. What you make money running computer program? Like that sounds scammy. I was like doing like internet marketing and stuff, coding for that at the time. And then I start reading up on Litecoin and Bitcoin. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the future. This is the next step that we have to take. And like I never really been able to see like, I mean, in a sense of like more cosmic principles, right? Like something has value because we believe it has value. So the US dollar, intrinsically is worthless, right? But we believe that it has some form of value, so therefore it has value. And then I see this with crypto and I was like, oh, perfect, man. Like it's a backdoor right in the system, right? It's, a way to reset the economic foundation of the world, which like if you're looking at the source of the problem, it's the economics, right? I mean,
Right.
there's no disincentives for destroying the environment. There's, nothing built into the model to add cost for, negative behaviors and things like that. I mean, really like the system as we know it and the economics really are driven by like who is, able to be the smartest and, who's able to fuck someone else over the most. So that kind of really drove me into crypto. So then Nexus, I started building Nexus in 2014. Started out as CoinShield because we were actually trying to destroy all the scams back in 2014, if you remember that, where there was, shitcoin after shitcoin after shitcoin. So we kind of had this mechanism built in where people could actually trade their shitcoins into us, and then they would receive CSD or CoinShield in return. And then we'd take that shitcoin and dump it on the market to prevent these scams from taking off. And then that would generate Bitcoin, which then we would take the Bitcoin and pump it back into Nexus or, CoinShield at the time, so that it would slowly we'd like absorb these shit coins and then grow, our from there. But like we kind of had to abandon that idea because when I started reading into money transmitter laws and stuff like that, I was like,
Right.
oh God, this is going to become, and the pandemonium was just getting worse and worse and worse. I was like, okay, like, so when I met Keith and Preston, that's where we shifted it into Nexus. But I started building it with the Purecoin code base from 2012, actually, because I wanted to get as close to Satoshi as possible. Some of his original code. If you actually look on our GitHub repository, I actually have Bitcoin version 1.0 actually hosted on there just as a little homage to Satoshi, so people can see like where Bitcoin came from, what Satoshi was thinking. So like as a programmer, I learned to program myself, I guess, just by reading other people's code. So, back in 2013, there was no tutorial to say, oh, how do you build a cryptocurrency, right? Because anybody that really knew anything wasn't going to share anything at all. So I just started reading in the code and started tweaking it and then making some new, innovations in it. So I think CoinShield launched with like 10 or 15 new different features, such as like clock synchronization protocols, multiple mining channels, where you have 3 channels to prevent 51% attacks from one, channel being the monopoly. and then the trust system, which is like a trust-based proof of stake, and so on and so forth. So that's the timeline up to about 2017, and then over 2016, I started developing an architecture, which eventually became the 3DC, which is kind of our scaling solution to solve the blockchain trilemma. And in that same timing too, I had met Dino Farinacci, and he was an old internet pioneer that's working on the locator identity separation protocol. And me and him just started chatting, and that's when I learned about the OSI, which stands for Open Systems Interconnection, which is essentially the stack that the internet runs on. It's a 7-layer software stack, and that kind of like wove together into the development of the Tritium protocol, which became a 7-layer software stack, and then the Tau framework, which is basically unlocking this 3DC. But providing an upgrade path too, because one of our original intentions and what we've always said, back in the day is we're like, Bitcoin's king, man. Like we're not the type of hype people that are just, oh, we're going to take over Bitcoin. We're going to be better than Bitcoin. Cause respect your roots. Right. And that's how we kind of always have been. So we designed a lot of our technology to also be backwards compatible with existing legacy blockchains and also provide them an upgrade path if they so chose. Right. So Tritium was the first one that we did as a live network upgrade, that activated smart contracts and our 7-layer software stack, which essentially provides developers the ability to develop decentralized applications, but without needing such complex languages such as Ethereum, Solidity, and stuff like that. And so that kind of has led us to now we're working on the Amin, Tritium++, and Obsidian protocols, which are going to be individual hard forks, therefore, that will also, like I said, provide an upgrade path. So if any other legacy blockchain says, okay, well, this legacy blockchain isn't scaling, right? We can actually provide that infrastructure to do it, but we're kind of doing it as the test bed first, as we're paving out, because Bitcoin, they're a victim of their own success in the sense that, there's billions and billions and billions of dollars that rely on the infrastructure. So they can't really, they're not as free to innovate as we are, right? Because there's so much at stake if they make any mistakes. Like, we saw the inflation vulnerability that was found just because somebody, forgot, the assertion that they had, inside checking for, duplicate inputs and stuff. So, we're kind of proving this technology as well as, developing it, that hopefully can, provide value to other blockchains in the future. Because I kind of believe the block size debate, there's big blockers and small blockers. And, that was like where I started really developing that scaling protocol in 2016. I think both sides are right. For, the big blockers are right that, like, yeah, blocks should be bigger than 1 megabyte, but small blockers are right where, you can't indefinitely scale the block size, like Bitcoin SV is doing. It just doesn't work. You have cryptographic limitations and bottlenecks too. Like, you have to verify every one of the signatures in the block, right? So if you have bigger and bigger and bigger blocks, that takes a lot of computing cycles to actually verify the ECDSA. So we've kind of broken and developed this protocol that's kind of like in between the two, because the small blockers are going for, layer 2 solutions, Lightning Network, and there's a lot of debate whether that's going to truly be decentralized. From what I've seen, economically, I just don't see it working as being truly decentralized, but it does work for a scaling solution, which, comes into the blockchain trilemma that Vitalik, said, you can't have decentralization, scalability, and security. You can only have 2 of 3, right? So a lot of times, these people will sacrifice decentralization for scaling. EOS is a good example. Ethereum, they say that they have decentralization above scalability, which is why they're slow. But I believe that there's a way to solve this. And based on our architecture, it's been showing pretty significant results, even with the Tritium protocol. We're processing pretty large amounts of contracts per second. The fastest I saw was 41,000, and the slowest is 1,000, 2,000 contracts per second. And that's processing time, though. That means, like, from the time you receive the block till you've processed the block entirely, right? Because even if you have a large block that's like 2 gigabytes, if this block takes 10 minutes to process, it won't work, right? And that's the problem with big blocks is, Bitcoin SV is going to get to a point where if you can't continue to process all of this, cryptography in these blocks, and it takes longer than the block's time span, then it's not going to work. There's that upper limit at that point, right? So we've kind of, I guess, been developing things that can hopefully solve that.
Yeah, smart contracts have kind of been on the forefront of like what's going to fuel mass adoption. But we've seen, the worst of what could happen early on with, the Ethereum Dell smart contract hack and other smart contracts failing and things that aren't really even smart contracts. I don't know how they get away with calling themselves smart contracts.
Yeah.
They're maybe blockchain contracts at best, but I mean, where do you see, smart contracts kind of like kicking off in a mainstream industry? Who's like the first player? Who's the demographic audience for this technology right now?
I mean, right now we're focusing a lot on startups. So, I mean, if you think about capitalization tables, operating agreements, things like that, dividends, I think that's a really good starting place for smart contracts because right now, I mean, you could use a smart contract in the way that people envision it of being this should replace law, right? Code is law. But if the legal system doesn't have any connection to that or recognition of that
Right,
as court
exactly.
admissible, then it's pointless, right?
Yeah,
So
it's
you need to find,
playground rules at best.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, you sort of broke up right there, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's
Yeah, and so I mean, what we're focusing on, and this is something that we've spoken with a few individuals about, is okay. Well, how do you develop something that can eventually be used legally, but that still provides a purpose now, that almost, how should I say it, wedges smart contracts into the legal system by providing case law? Because the way I mean, if I go into a dispute with you, right, and it's over a blockchain transaction, now the blockchain generally is not going to be considered is admissible. But if that's the only evidence, then it can be
right.
admissible.
So it's like a financial infrastructure solution at the moment, rather than like a legal resolution infrastructure solution.
Yeah, and
Like internal law is how I would see it.
yeah, but I mean, more to the extent of that, we're using this technology and we're deploying this technology for new businesses and stuff like that, so that they can, if they get into disputes, start to develop case law because it's case law that we really want for smart contract enforcement by the legal system, right? Oh, this smart contract did this, so therefore we can admit this in the court to show that you paid but you didn't deliver, and et cetera, right? So when you start getting these new companies developing, let's say an operating agreement or equity agreement or things like that. And then there's a dispute between founders, and then that goes to court, and then the court starts saying, okay, well, we'll let this smart contract be admitted into the court because that's the only real proof that we have. Then you're kind of like killing two birds with one stone because, for one, you're getting initial use cases of smart contracts, but two, you're developing the possibility of this case law because a lot of the legal system is going to use this case law and say, oh, okay, well, there's another case of somebody using blockchain, and there's another case, and there's another case. So therefore, it's more likely that we can admit this as evidence and start to build that foundation for more, smart contract functionality in the future. So as far as like the legal smart contracts, that's one aspect. But then, I mean, there's other aspects too, like the voting protocol. I mean, because the Tritium protocol was developed from talking to people for years and years, understanding, big business, what do you need? What do you want in a blockchain? Even talking to people building on Ethereum. What are you using Ethereum for? Most of the time, they abstract completely away from Ethereum and they use it just to store a little bit of data. That's most dApps. Anytime they're a dApp, they'll like either storing a teeny little bit of data on the blockchain or, sorry, brain fart. They're storing a little bit of data or they're using a token, right? Tokenomics in their service and whatever. And they're like, oh, we're blockchain powered now. But,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
nobody really uses Ethereum for a storing completeness. I've seen maybe a few apps that maybe use some of the more, advanced features of it, but like most people don't really use that. And the other thing is, blockchain developers are just completely out of reach, especially, for Ethereum. You have this totally new language. There's all these idiosyncrasies with this language. Like, I mean, the DAO hack, what happened, I believe it was something with recursive call. So when the function's calling itself, it wasn't updating the state of the stack variables. And it still does this, which means I think the last quote I saw is 90% of all, smart contracts have this flaw in them still
Oof.
from the DAO, right? Now it may not be as terminal as a DAO, but it's a pretty easy mistake to make. So when we're talking about these smart contracts, they're supposed to be more secure, not less secure, right?
Right, exactly.
It's just like I mean, cryptos should be more secure by giving people access to the private keys. But look at Peter Schiff. What does it matter if you
Well,
lose your
exactly. What
private
happens if
key?
I lost the keys to a smart contract as a corporation or as an entity or even
And
as an individual? Exactly. Then what do I do?
then what do you do? Is it that much more secure?
Do we
Now you're
fork? Do
actually
we roll
in a
back the
worse
whole blockchain?
exactly, right? And I mean, you're in a worse position when that type of things happen. So I think there's certain fundamentals of crypto that need to be abstracted away from developers and users. Managing private keys is one big thing. People should not manage private keys. I mean, I know a lot of
Facts.
people that like looked into crypto and they're like, I've been doing IT for 20 years and I look into this crypto stuff and I see private keys and wallets and I go, whoa, no, I'm never doing that. I'm never touching that. Right. People can't, possibly think to manage it. And the second thing is blockchain developers that are developing dApps, right, or smart contracts should not have to think about security, right? The system itself should have security baked into the protocol, right? That's the point of building a smart contract. It's not something that gives you 10,000 more issues that you could possibly have in idiosyncrasies, but it's something that you can guarantee to a certain extent, obviously without, stupidity coming into the equation, but you can guarantee to a certain extent that even not the best coder is still able to make secure code because the system itself is designed to protect against those types of things. Like our virtual machine, for one, like prevents you from doing an overflow. An overflow is, value can only have, let's say we're in 8 bits, right? 8 bits are, 4 switches. That can only hold a number of up to 255. So if I try to store or I try to add 1 to 255 with 8 bits, guess what's going to happen? It's going to go back to 0, right? And that's called an overflow. And it's just going to keep going over and over. And overflows are a big security risk that are very easy to make too, because you're not going to always know the exact same size of each, one of these figures that you're using, the data types, whether it's 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, 64, or whatever. So our virtual machine actually throws an exception and it fails if you accidentally do an overflow, which that's kind of one of those safety mechanisms that are built into it. Is like, common mistakes that a developer should have. They shouldn't be able to make those mistakes, writing code on Nexus. But then the second part is like you have this entire industry of, blockchain developers, based around Solidity and Ethereum and whatever, but you have this whole world of web developers. So why are smart contracts so complicated to program on when you can make it something as easy for web developers to code on? And that's kind of second aspect that we focus on too, is like abstract away the keys and make it easy so that anybody with access to a web developer can code on Nexus.
Right. If it isn't smart enough for the average person to not fuck themselves over trying to utilize it, it's not a smart thing, right? And that's, I feel like people have a lot of issues with smart contracts calling out to poor or bad addresses. You have an escrow for like an ERC20 token using a centralized exchange Ethereum receiving address. Smart contract triggers sends these tokens to, Coinbase Ethereum address, and you don't get those ERC20s anymore. They're kind of just like lost into the exchange ether, so to speak.
Yep. Yeah, and there's a lot of issues. There's other issues too, like with having to send a test transaction before you actually send your coins, right? I mean, that's one of the biggest issues. Like, who in their right mind is going to go and say, oh, I have to buy a piece of gum. Oh, I'm going to send you a test transaction for okay, now I made sure your address is good. Cool. And if they don't do that and you send it the wrong address or it scans wrong or there's a bug, like coins are gone, right? So that's another thing. There's just, how should I say it? Technology, I think advancement of technology is not just the capability of the technology, but it's also the capability for the user to be insulated from themselves, from the problems that they themselves can generate. Like you said, if it's not smart enough to be able to handle these types of issues that people are going to have, including developers, then the technology is just not there. It's not smart, right? And so, I mean, we're getting back to earlier, like people don't know so much about me and whatever. I mean, it's because I've been coding, I've been building, I've been sitting back and I've been watching other people make the mistakes for us, right? We haven't really, and it's great too, because I mean, if we were super, super big right now, it would be a lot more difficult to be deploying what we're deploying. We're a nice size, we're growing organically, it's community driven, which is awesome. And yeah, so yeah, Ethereum.
Nexus has been way too humble, bro. I'm telling you right now. Y'all survived a horrible winter and coming out strong, and been around a lot longer than some of these projects that pop in and out, and end up getting a lot more clout because they're just loud. They walk into the room loud and obnoxious, and they get more recognition than a lot of the more humble projects that are actually head down dev modes doing things like Nexus. So like, if you need someone's permission to start being a dick, dude, do it. Like, just go into a room and just flop it onto a table and just be like, yo, I've been here a minute, like, what's up? Like, a lot of people don't know about Nexus, and and I get a lot of slack for it by even letting it slip when people are like, oh, name some altcoins that you like, and I'm like, I name some, like, what about Nexus? Like, fuck, I forgot to mention Nexus. It's definitely in my blockfolio. It's just I forget because it isn't, y'all ain't loud enough.
Well, and it's also, I mean, we've always been kind of a secret in crypto. I mean, even through bear markets, we've always like the community has always been super cool. Like people kind of found refuge in the community. I mean, especially during 2015, 2016.
Yeah, it was definitely
Oh,
not a pump and dump environment. I can say that as much as the community goes for sure.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, we'll get recognition as we, but we're not really playing the whole like try to be loud, look at me game. I mean, we're building really good tech and we're building things that relate to people. We're building use cases. Like we're doing what all these projects said they should do, but we're not saying that we're gonna do it. We just do it and then be like, oh hey, it's done. You know. So I mean,
Right.
I think you know at a certain point that loudness like oh hey we're so much better than you or we're so like I don't know that's the wrong vibe. It's not the vibe we're going for. That's like what Justin Sun does, you know. I mean it's and it's just completely idiotic. And like I mean we've like I don't know, when we get Lambo boys coming into our community and they're just like 1 minute we're just like oh my god like go away. you
Yeah,
know?
but
So
that's the fandom, and for
yeah,
anything to go mainstream, the fandom's always going to have a level of a wave of toxicity come its way, and that's the mass adoption
yeah,
train. Unfortunately, can't hold it back. And
yeah,
Freddie said this in the chat, and that's definitely what got like Nexus on my radar early on was the whole like the Nexus Earth concept with like the satellite decentralized internet. And Freddie was wondering, what's up with the satellite? How's that going, bro?
yeah. So we have one satellite purchase with Vector. They kind of like I guess them going under really. I mean, it kind of set us back, but not really. I mean, we're still working on the satellite project, and especially as more funding comes in, but we kind of shifted the model a little bit. And I'm actually developing, an operating system to help run on these satellites so that we
Oh,
can
wow.
essentially develop. Like the idea is that we want to have the constellation build itself. So you want to apply blockchain like game theory into the hardware network itself, because if we just deploy the satellites, that's like another centralized ISP. Elon Starlink, it's another centralized ISP. Like it doesn't, it's the same concepts just with a different, hardware on it. But like what we're working on is like developing this open source hardware, open source software. And we'll obviously deploy a few of our own satellites, but the power of it's really going to come in when other people can deploy these satellites. So you have kind of a two-pronged approach. The first one is you got to create demand for this, right? So where's the demand going to be? Well, why would I want to use satellites? The biggest use case that we're focusing on now is a secure data layer, right? So I can store data physically insulated from anything else if I have sensitive data that I want to make sure that it's in a safe place. And that ties into with the LOD file system that I'm working on as well, that you're going to see come out in Amin, where you as an individual can lease some of your hard drive space in order to earn money by storing files for other people, kind of like IPFS-ish, but tying the smart contract model in with that, like Filecoin was trying to do. I'm not sure exactly what their progress is, but this
Yeah, I haven't heard much from them, but I love the concept.
yeah. And so this concept now, it's going to come probably before the satellites as far as I can start making money off my computer. Because that was one of the things that really got me into crypto. And what I saw is like the great equalizing force is where you give everybody equal opportunity. I don't believe everybody is like born equal in the sense that like, some people are going to be more driven for other things and they're going to build more stuff than other people, right? But the problem with the world is that there's a lot of brilliant people that don't have the opportunity to express that brilliance, right? Or
No,
they
the
don't have.
problem with the world is bad actors are going to be the first to utilize some of this shit. And that's the real problem. That's why like we can't have nice things, like you start decentralizing file storage, criminals that have illegal files are
Yeah.
probably going to be the first to utilize this, facet of security. And that's unfortunate, the reality that we live in. And oh, shout out to Nathan Hawk and Mike Salvi in the chat. How goes it, bro? It's nice to see you guys here.
Well,
But
so
like, how do we prevent like that, dystopian environment where like bad actors are the first in? So obviously they're the early adopters that can to be the whales of this of future environment.
So I started thinking about this exact thing in 2016 when I started developing the DAO architecture. And part of the DAO architecture is not only for regulating the actual on-chain funding, but for also regulating smart contracts routes, right? So if you have a smart contract or you have file or you have something like that associated, the DAO should have some form of vote on that. So if there is some sort of discovery of, malicious files being utilized or, Nexus being used for malicious activities, the public in the community can identify that and then cast it to a vote. And then that vote itself would enforce on the protocol itself so that you can protect against this. Because I don't think there's necessarily, I mean, I personally believe everybody has their own values, and everybody's values are like, perfectly valid for their own selves. And you're never going to really get everybody to value things perfectly the same. But if you can provide technology in, instead of it being an authority that says, okay, this is what you can and can't do, you make the community the collective authority and then have that cryptographically enforced so that certain smart
But
contracts.
unfortunately, though, bro, the community as a collective aren't always good. They're like, history has proven the majority of, people are fucking assholes.
Yeah.
Like, you're just going to end up with slavery on the blockchain.
Potentially. I mean, that's where you get into the other human element, because this is just technology, right? It's a tool. So, I mean, you have to teach people how to utilize that tool and how to vote responsibly. And you have to develop, the proper game theory for people to not be assholes. I think the great reason that most people are assholes in the world is because you get farther being an asshole,
Yep.
right? So when you shift that, like, kind of comes back to the, beginning of the conversation, when you shift that foundation, when you shift that game theory, right? Then it shifts everybody's mentality. So, that's part of where the social organizational technology in the DAO comes in very important. Because, if people can't organize themselves together, it's generally going to just degrade back into a hierarchy, right?
Right.
And that social organization will essentially, what it is, does encapsulates people into smaller cells, kind of like cells of people. And then each cell can essentially reorganize or organize itself to whatever it feels. And then the cells themselves form layers, from the bottom up. And then that eventually forms into, a key or a contract from the DAO. And combining that together with like a disincentive to be an asshole and an incentive for Nexus to be successful and, all these other things, I think it will kind of drive people to want to get rid of things like, child porn or things like that.
Right.
I mean, if it's a smart contract that's found to be doing that, or there's a TNS entry that's found to be linking to these types of things, and people can essentially lock that or block that without having to do a hard fork. But what it does is it allows you to do, like, I wouldn't say censorship, but it allows people to decide what they want on their network, right?
Right.
I mean,
I have a moral qualm with the term censorship. It's if you walk into my house and start, smoking a tobacco pipe, and I say no smoking in my house, and you say don't censor me, bro.
yeah, yeah,
It's not censorship, or is it?
yeah.
Yes, no. It's a moral qualm, and I think the tools that we are seeing being developed, even throughout history, you could go and see like the mass consciousness shifts that occur around technology, and how it's implemented, utilized, and the repercussions of the implementations of this new technology shifts the whole world's consciousness into a more linear process of like what is more right
Yeah.
or wrong in a I don't want to say consensus, but yes, in more of a consensus way.
Well, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with somebody, I guess, being disallowed to do something within a space where those rules are set, right? In your house, you have the rules of your house, and you value certain things in your house, and it's your space. So when somebody comes in, it's like a contract; they have to enter in and agree to the
My
contract.
node.
Yeah.
I
What's that?
was like, my house, my node.
Yeah, exactly. Your nodes. So, I mean, when we're talking about a global ecosystem, right? I mean, you're going to want to find ways to encapsulate as much value in that as possible, like different people's values, but also give the people to discern values that are out of alignment with that, right? Like, I'm sure, terrorism is a minority, pursuit. And if people discovered terrorism, then they definitely wouldn't want that to be supported on the network. So it allows the network to self-regulate. But our DAO is also not like a single voting group, mob rules, 50% wins, which that creates a problem too, because some people's values, um, how should I say? Some people may see things that other people don't, and they may themselves be a minority, right? Like
Right.
developers, for one, right? Blockchain developers, we're a bit of a minority. So if it was just like, us devs versus the whole community on like certain, blockchain, like architectural adjustments, right? It's not going to really work that well because we're going to be completely outvoted, and the public may make decisions that aren't really in the best interest of that.
Yeah,
So
exactly what I have an issue with voting, blockchain voting, where like people are idiots, and your investors are probably going to be stupid, and then you're going to ask them to make like hard decisions, based on smart contracts because you're rewarding them, thinking that things are gonna go great. And I have this issue with people that think and pray like Bitcoin's gonna be mass adoption, Bitcoin's gonna be the main coin. I'm like, yeah, and the main reason they say this is because Bitcoin's better, Bitcoin's safer, Bitcoin's been around longer. This is all the reasons why Bitcoin's gonna be mass adopted. Like, you're right and wrong, because the mass doesn't always adopt the things that are the best for them. They
Yep.
usually just things that are shiny, the thing that they like the color of or the logo. Look at McDonald's as opposed to home cooking, bro. People don't choose what is best for them on the mass scale of things. They just go with convenience or with fad or trends. But
Yep.
just because Bitcoin may be the best in every opinion you may have doesn't mean everyone's going to choose it, because they have to choose it at the end of the day.
Yep. 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 And so, I mean, our kind of idea on the DAO thing is if you encapsulate people of like values in a specific group and make that kind of like a representative democracy, in a sense of that, developers have a vote, DAO contract holders have another vote, stakers have another vote, miners have another vote, individuals have another vote. Then you encapsulate kind of a larger perspective
Hmm.
of the values, and then you compare those values, equal to one another, right? That are encapsulated in each one of those spheres,
More
so that
like a
you,
matrix.
yeah, you get more of a balance in, I guess, the decision making process, and it helps you filter out some of that noise quite substantially, from like a bunch of idiots just voting for nothing, right? And I think that will really significantly help. And also, just like you talk about, people, idiots, shiny stuff, whatever. I mean, that's a symptom of the programming of the world, right? People want shiny stuff because they've been marketed to have shiny stuff, right? And that's all like there's so much marketing that's going on actually manipulating your brain chemistry, and a lot of people just are asleep and they're unaware of that, right? So that as these new emergent systems start coming out, I mean, it's forcing, like, let's look at the perfect example of like how people are forced to actually evolve and think, right? There's so many scams in crypto. People look after each other. They do their own research a little bit more. Yeah, you still get a bunch of dumbasses that don't, but the general census is people think a lot more in crypto, or at least attempt to think a little bit more than they would in other industries. Why? Because there's more danger, there's more necessity for that, and those ones that become successful right in the natural selection are the ones that do that. So they're the ones that become the bigger influencers and so on and so forth. So I mean, blockchain really does, I think, have the capability to be transforming all of these issues that human psychology has,
Yep.
which are symptoms of the natural economic system. People being assholes, people being stupid, people waiting around for someone, right? Like there wasn't any other type of investment class besides securities and bonds and stuff like that, right? Which are really all based on like the performance of a singular entity, right? You're investing in a single person to do it for you. That's the whole like dumb, I don't care, I don't think mentality, right? Now there's decentralized protocols, there's DAOs, and people can actually have an ownership in the system, right? People think they have an ownership in certain systems, but they don't. People pay their taxes, they vote, but like really nothing changes, right? Now people have that ownership, and that changes things substantially, and it kind of helps people come out of that like not thinking mindset and start emerging into more of that and realizing more, of themselves. And that's really fundamentally what the goal that I would like to see in this is to see that mentality change, to see these mindsets shifting from that I'm going to wait for somebody to do it for me and not do my own research and make that
Right.
decision, to I take personal responsibility for my decisions. I have an active contribution in this project. The project success is based on me as well as it is on the rest of the people, right?
Blockchain's like the newer, digital version of the meteor hitting the dinosaurs when it comes to
Yeah,
human
yeah.
extinction and evolution.
Oh yeah.
This you mentioned natural selection. That's what blockchain is really doing,
Yeah,
is showing and forcing us through this kind of bootstrapped, kicked off, natural selected order, where we're seeing almost like a financial Darwinism or intellectual technological Darwinism kick off, where now you're looking at a 10-year-old child, and if they don't know how to code, they're almost illiterate at this point, right? Like,
yeah.
do you know how to wipe your own ass? Like, well, you don't know how to code. And that's where we're at now, because of blockchain technology evening that playing field that was once only a resource to the 1% is now a resource to all of us, which, like you said, it inspires everybody to do their own research and kind of be like, I'm going to get off my ass and do this thing because it can be done. Look at X, Y, and Z. When people say, and I love when people roast Jeff Bezos, so like, yeah, he did it out of his parents' garage. I'm like, yeah, with $300,000 investment from his mommy and daddy, bro. Like,
Oh really?
there's a lot of people that are doing things, from the garage with like just a couple computers they borrowed from like a friend. So to see
Yeah.
the playing field so evenly leveled,
Yeah, man.
I think
Equal
that's what we're seeing.
opportunity.
Like this natural selection, forced Darwinism, because of this tool, this meteorite that has landed on our laps.
Yeah. Yep, and that kind of like ties in with the philosophy we've always said is not everybody has money, but everyone has time, and I think time is a great equalizer. Um, what is it? Old money buys new time, right? All the old money in the world is buying all the new time of all the new people, and that's one of the biggest problems too, because money doesn't age,
Well,
right?
that's
So
how they tried to take our time away. They tried to convert it into a debt of money, right? So, if you're already in debt by rent, you're already in debt by utility or by, eggs, bread, whatever cost it is to live, you're already negative time. So you don't have personal time to personally grow,
and it's old money that's buying all that new time, right? Because they
right?
have all stockpiles of this old currency, and then they're able to pay people to steal their time from them, and so on and so
Well,
forth.
seeing what's
But
happened with the boomers versus millennials, millennials are working a hell of a lot more for a hell of a lot less.
yeah, yeah. So I think when you can shift it to where new money is the only thing that can buy new time, then their money becomes worthless,
Yep.
and you reset the game. And I think that's why like we're working on like the LOD file system, which is something where I can earn money by spending my time now, right? Or the trust system where you actually have to stake and lock your coins up and build that trust up, which gives you a higher return or higher reward rate from 0.5% to 3% based on that trust or time that you've contributed to it. And that also it protects the DAO from somebody being able to just buy a bunch of coin and try to manipulate it, right? Because our coins are locked to time. So that means if I bought a million Nexus, I would have to stake those for a year before I'd start to get, any significant voting weight. But if somebody else decided that they'd want to go buy a million Nexus to try to manipulate the voting system, they're going to still have to stake those coins for a whole year, but they're never going to be able to have the time that the other people already had contributed to it because they'd have to take a time machine to get back, right?
Right.
That creates it's kind of part of our time-based security model where you can protect against that old money invasion, right? Where they just buy a bunch of money and it's easy for them, right? This way, their most valuable thing is their time, right? I mean, they have all their money, they want to spend their time the way they want to spend their time, like they're under high demand, et cetera, et cetera. So like, that's the best place to hit them. That's the most expensive thing to hit them in because time is the only thing that they can't have all of, no matter how much money they have, no matter whatever. They can't get any more time than anybody else. So when you move the system to be enforcing itself based on that time, game over.
That's why I think the corporate America, mainstream, didn't really vibe very well with Andrew Yang's universal basic income concept because, a lot of people would have a lot more time on their hands. And we see what happens, like in a majority where people have time on their hands and are not trying to, they're not stuck in survival mode, trying to scrounge around to feed themselves or their families. But when they have like, time to work on themselves or invest in their neighborhood, they do. We've seen the boom of entrepreneurship in this country. And when you look at the people that have been blessed a little bit, with some old money maybe coming in through like, parents or just living a different lifestyle where they have a lot of time, they end up becoming entrepreneurs. And this
Yeah.
country wasn't found on entrepreneurs. It was founded on assembly line workers, cogs, gears, the monkeys that turn wrenches and pack a box and don't ask questions. But we're starting to get machines to do a lot of this, and people are getting a lot of free time on their hands, and they're becoming more of a content creator environment. We're seeing podcasts pop up, independent journalism, and again, this is what people are going to be doing with the time that they had. They want you to be in debt with with time. They don't want you to have this free time.
Yep, exactly. Because they're the only ones that should have it because their old money is what gets them that time, right? So, I mean, when you equalize that and you give everybody the ability to monetize their time at the same capability as somebody else, just the same opportunity, I mean, it changes everything. I mean, we've seen people on our website for years and years and years from Venezuela all the time. And they were always searching out how to mine Nexus. Why? Because they needed money. They needed to start, taking that and they'd sell, the Nexus for Bitcoin and then smuggle food into the country,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, through Amazon of all
Yeah,
product.
yeah,
That was the best. I remember hearing about that.
yeah. It's so amazing. I mean, to see those types of moments are the moments that really like those are the moments that keep me going, like through the bear markets, through shit, through people, I mean, as a dev, you get criticized more than just anything. I mean, it's
Well, you're
crazy.
living up to,
But
you're forced to live up to unobtainable expectations at this point, yeah, because of the ICO boom, projects like yours that didn't go down those similar routes are held to the expectations of those that did. You have more of an issue with your legacy than not. If Nexus was to come out today with all the white paper, get all the information you have come out today, people wouldn't shut up about it. They would be all over Nexus if it came out today. But because it's been out for a while, the expectations are so high, it cannot be reached. It's like over fantasizing about the first date. No matter what happens, it's not going to be as good as all the billions of fantasies you've ran through your head. And that's what happens when, projects like yours have been around so long, is unfortunately, you're going to have to do something ridiculous, fathomable, unrealistic to get people to be like, oh, okay. They're desensitized.
Yeah.
They
I
are
mean,
desensitized to success. That's what
it's
happened.
also that we're playing the long game too. So, I mean, we're not doing the short term. Yeah. Like if we launch, like, yeah, you could be big. I mean, a lot of the ICOs that, launched in 2017, I mean, they're lower than their ICO price right now. I mean, they're in shit. Like you look at their RON coin market cap, it's like minus 100, minus 500%, right? I mean, we're still plus 4,000, 5,000%. So on one hand, yes, it's difficult because we are an older blockchain, but on the other hand, I mean, a lot of the community that's been around, a lot of the people, I mean, they're still with us. We're still rolling, I mean, it's a strong, tight knit community. And I mean, that's something that's, I think, been more powerful, that like these ICOs are never going to capture the network effect. So the
That's
only
true.
negative thing that we have to do is we have to convince people, oh, hey, we're not an ICO. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't like,
I feel like I should
sorry.
have mentioned that earlier, but
I realized things were getting really bad in 2017. I had people coming in and
yeah.
saying, you have a blockchain? And I was like, oh my God, blockchain's a feature now? Like, what the fuck is happening, dude? This is terrible. Like, oh my God. Right. And I mean, it's just so I see a lot of these ICOs are not doing so well. You got the ones that are, like Chainlink that are like, oh yeah, we're going to solve the blockchain interoperability problem. I mean, really, it's just a JSON parser, right? I mean, all this bullshit. I mean, I think at a certain point, it's going to be revealed a lot more, and people are going to feel less safe with these things, right? Like quantum computers start becoming more prevalent.
Yep.
People are going to start making, these thoughts. People continue to lose private keys. They're going to start. So the features that we've developed now are also ones that, at the short-term moment, may not be like to people, but they're going to see in a few years. Oh wow, like Nexus was thinking really far ahead on this. Like, that's going to make me feel that much safer with it. So, I mean, yeah, in a sense, the legacy is, a bit of a problem. But on the other side, I mean, being around for 6 years has also been a strong benefit for us as
If
well.
you could have done it different, would you have gone that ICO route, knowing?
No, no,
No.
no, never would.
Like see, like I feel like ICOs got such a bad rap because of all the failures, like fucking like Kick and Telegram and all the other like mainstream ones that popped in, like Kodak and shit, and just. But like Binance was an ICO, a lot of there's a few ICOs that actually just did an ICO on the Ethereum and then went and did their own blockchain, with kind of like used Ethereum just for the funding, and now
Yeah,
are doing something completely on their own. But I
I
don't think
don't.
ICOs should have that stigma.
No, I mean, ICOs aren't bad inherently. I mean, when I first saw them, I was like, oh God, people figured out how to get away with 100% pre-meds, right? And it's just like, oh man,
Yeah.
this is gonna be good, right? But I mean, in the two senses, like it goes to the thing we were talking about earlier about the division in crypto. There's like the suits and then there's the crypto cypherpunks, right? And the suits are going to be the guys that are doing companies, ICOs. Binance is great, it's big, blah blah blah. Some of these ICOs have been pretty successful projects, but they're never going to capture the network effect. Even things like Ethereum, right? I mean, they kind of have a network effect, but they're still really limited by Vitalik, right? They're still limited by like, this Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, and they've kind of locked themselves into that.
Yeah, they
Ripple,
did.
whenever we're going to really have the network effect, we're always going to know about Ripple. We're always going to know Ethereum. We're always going to see Tron. We're always going to see Bitcoin. They're always going to be up on the top coins, but none of them are going to get anywhere close to Bitcoin because Bitcoin has done like Bitcoin is the true essence of a network effect, right? And anybody that's doing an ICO is just they're never going to be able to achieve that. They're only going to go so far because they're limited by the centralized resources required to make that grow, right? I mean, and so that's kind of how like we are going. Like that's why I would never say that we want to do an ICO because it's not about the money, man. I mean, like I've been building this shit. Like I just need to be able to pay my rent. I don't need. I mean, it's hard to find developers that are even capable of understanding, what we're doing, let alone like creating good
Yeah,
code.
that
Like,
drought is real.
not about money. I mean, money's not going to get us developers and know what they're doing, right? I mean,
Right.
money's not it's not going to really do a whole lot. I mean, as long as we have enough to pay the devs, which we do, I mean, because we have a funding mechanism built into the protocol, we're good. We don't need to do an ICO. We don't need to go out and raise money, and we don't need to make it a company. We build it as a community, right? And that's going to really drive that network effect in ways that these other projects are never going to have. So they're going to reach an asymptote, right? Which a lot of them already have. Like, you can only grow so far. Ripple, they've been sitting where they've been sitting for a long time. They haven't really grown except for when Bitcoin grows, right? The Satoshi value doesn't really go that high. Why? Because everybody knows, right? They can try to peddle that stuff in as much as they want. They can try to make people believe that you need it. They can try all their mind manipulations and tactics, but that never ever can compete with a community of passionate people that want to change the fucking world and believe they can do it. There's nothing that can compare with that. Not even the biggest companies in the world or any of that. I mean, it's about the people, and that's why I started this project. And that's, I did it because we wanted to make the world a better place, not make ourselves a bunch of money. So, I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with making money. That's great. I mean, making money is a byproduct.
I want to make money obsolete. That would be great. Just make money obsolete. It's irrelevant as a concept. The concept of money, it's just so irrelevant in this day and age with the technology. The only reason we really need it is to kind of like disincentivize gluttony or hoarding of resources to that effect.
Well,
but
in an extent, but I mean, money, I've seen a lot of people talk about this, especially like, a lot of people are like, we should go back to bartering and trading, fuck money, we don't need money. But I mean, it's a valuable tool. It's a very, very useful tool. I mean, the implementation of money in the current system as we know it is completely fucked, right? That's the problem. It's not necessarily the concept of money. It's just a storage of energy, right? I mean, I put my time into developing this, and then I can exchange that with you. I think that's very valuable technology, but like,
but not every 1 to 1 hour is equal. Your 1 hour to my 1 hour isn't as tangibly equal.
Yeah.
I've had a weird conversation with Andreas Antonopoulos about this before, like where individuals will probably have like their own currency, where I'll have Ken coin, you'll have Colin coin, and we'll probably have one minted every hour, and we'll use that as a currency to, and as we spend it, we'll be it's almost like taxing, our previous transactors, because, now more are in the market circulating to that effect.
Yeah, I don't know. I've thought quite a bit about that, and I kind of come down to like, I don't think we need so many currencies. I mean, I think a single universal one. I mean, now using tokens, fungible tokens in a non-monetary aspect, I think are going to be very, very useful, such as like, I have 100 pounds of tomatoes, right? I can tokenize those tomatoes, 1 token for every 10th of a pound or 100th of a pound. And then therefore I can transfer these tokens, and you can regulate the supply chains and have these tokens represent physical items, right?
Why aren't we seeing more of this done on like Bitcoin with color coins and things like wrapped Bitcoin or something? You could have Bitcoin, like a Satoshi, a tomato backed by a Satoshi wrapped in what could be like tomato sats or something.
I'm not sure. I mean, the Bitcoin devs, I know they're not super happy with people posting data onto the Bitcoin blockchain. So, I mean, even layer 2 things, like, I mean, certain people that were actually injecting data into the Bitcoin blockchain, I can't remember the project, the Bitcoin devs would get mad at it, right? Because they're just like super, so I think that's maybe part of it. There is a lot of politics as far as Bitcoin development is concerned, especially, regarding Jeff Garzik versus Blockstream versus, Gavin Andrewson and all that stuff. I mean, I have personal experience. Jeff Garzik's an advisor of ours. He's on the board of the Linux Foundation. He's one of the original core developers that actually developed with Satoshi. And he was a proponent of increasing the block size. But I mean, I've seen a lot of drama around that. So, I mean, I think Bitcoin has an agenda as far as my perception is concerned, and anything really not super aligned with that agenda is just somebody that's just, against that. And I mean, that's why we get this tribalism. That's why we get maximalism and all this stuff. And Bitcoin's agenda really is SegWit and Lightning. Why? Because that's what they decided, right? I mean, we could debate as to why exactly. I mean, if you look at the economics of it and you look at, opening Lightning channels, it looks a lot like opening a bank account, right?
Yeah.
And then if I can't send to you, right, because we don't have a channel open and it's $300 to open a channel, then we have to go to another place that we both have a channel open to, which would maybe be the pizza shop or whatever, which are going to become liquidity providers. And the providers that have the most liquidity and most open channels with other people are going to be the ones
And reputation,
actively.
right? I mean, you're gonna have to trust that. I mean, that's why I've always had issues with Lightning being more centralized by banks than ever. Like, that's
Yeah,
just a great
it's a new
opportunity
banking
for them.
protocol. I mean, the Blockstream was invested $70 million. It was invested in a Blockstream by a company called AXA Ventures, AXA Ventures. And if you look at the owner of AXA Ventures, it's actually the chairman of the Bilderberg Group.
Oh.
So yeah, there's quite a bit that goes pretty far back into that. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm a hardcore Bitcoiner. You know, like I got my Bitcoin tattoos and all. Like I'm not trying to say whatever, but Lightning ain't Bitcoin. You know, it's a coupon redeemable for Bitcoin, but Lightning is not Bitcoin. I just had my partner message me earlier today asking me like, I have a Bitcoin wallet. Somebody said they wanted to send me Lightning, but I can't receive it. Why? Isn't it Bitcoin? And I'm like, ha, well,
not
yes
really.
and no. Yeah, you need a coupon wallet to receive your coupon for Bitcoin, and then you can redeem that coupon for BTC.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at Satoshi's original posts, I mean, he outlined how to scale the Bitcoin protocol by increasing the block size every so many blocks because they only had it limited to 1 megabyte back in the day because it was easy to fill
Yes,
a Bitcoin
Satoshi
block.
was a big blocker.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the writings on the wall, it's pretty clear. I mean, but there is the other side of it too, where I mean, they are correct that you can't indefinitely scale the blockchain with block size, which I agree. But 1 megabyte is pretty ridiculous. I mean, they said that the reason for it was that they wanted to make it so mom and pop could run a Bitcoin node, right? Any mom and pop could run a Bitcoin node. But I mean, if you look at the cost of a 1 terabyte hard drive, it's $200. And you look at the cost of Bitcoin transaction in 2017, it was $200. So, I mean, tell me
Yeah,
what
and
one's more.
people will argue, Moore's law, exponential growth of technology, this, that, and the other, where that hard drive will probably be like $20 in a couple years, but then at that point you'll need more space, which will only cost more. I mean, it
And it's
keeps
not even,
growing.
yeah, it keeps growing. And I mean, the biggest one that I told you is like you have the cryptographic, and also, I mean, surprisingly, your database, your disk throughput is another huge bottleneck in your processing capability. So, I mean, if you have large blocks, yeah, whoop to do. But if you can't process those blocks within a block time span, it won't work, right? So, I mean, the Bitcoin architecture was based on like B money and Hashcash, right? I mean, Satoshi kind of developed the architecture, but it was really kind of just a combination of a lot of cypherpunk dreams that was finally implemented into something. It was a proof of concept. I mean, it was released as 0.1, the zero showing that it's actually an alpha version. Zero is before you actually release it. But if you notice, the Bitcoin devs haven't actually released it into a full version yet. I
Hmm.
wonder. Yeah, it's still 0.18. Yeah, it's because it was never actually officially 1.0. It's still in development version, which, I mean, yeah, we could get into all the reasons.
That's actually interesting. I didn't really notice that that
Yeah,
it's not a 1.0 yet. Yeah, it is
yeah,
0.18.
0.1 or 0.18 or 0.19 or something, and that's
Interesting.
because it's still in development, right? So I mean,
Well, I was just gonna, maybe segue into like what your thoughts are on like proof of stake versus like proof of work for scalability solutions, or even more so in like how Nexus could solve like maybe like scaling issues if it saw something happen like a CryptoKitty boom of smart contract use.
I'll just say when it comes to consensus mechanisms, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So there's a lot of people that are saying, "Oh, proof of stake's the way," and a lot of people saying, "Oh no, proof of work's the way." I mean, again, I'll say like down the middle of the road, like they're both right. They're both great protocols, but by themselves, they're not as secure as they are together, right? So we kind of form a hybrid type proof of work, proof of stake system because they check and balance each other. And that's kind of part of the principles of the three-dimensional chain is we creating checking and balancing consensus mechanisms. So we're using.
Which is the check, which is the balance, and how does one work with the other?
Good question. So, I mean, if you imagine three different locking layers, the L1 layer is a reputation-based Byzantine fault tolerance. So that's kind of like what Cosmos uses or a lot of those other, like PBFT, nodes. And then the second layer is your proof of stake or your L2 layer that uses stake and trust. So we use trust or reputation as one component of the weight or validity of the data. So that it's not just your instantaneous work and resources you contributed, but it's also your track record of your long time contributions, right? So when you show your long-term contributions over a period of time, then it helps prevent Sybil attacks. It makes it a lot more difficult to Sybil attack because you'd have to contribute a lot of time. So then the third layer is the L3 or the mining layer, where they're essentially, instead of it being one hash rules all, it's kind of a share-based decentralized mining pool, but they're going to submit it back into the L2. So what happens is the L1s are going to be mainly doing ledger level verification, and they're going to pass the contracts to the L2 along with their proofs and the Merkle proofs. The L2 is going to be processing some of these contracts and also verifying some of that data to a certain extent, because you have aggregation, and that's how you get some of the scalability. Is the L2 doesn't have to process as much data as the L1, right? The L1 produces the proofs that the L2 can use to verify that, right? So that they can only have to deal with a small proof rather than the entire data set. And then the L3
So
is
here's the answer rather than the equation. It's more like checking their homework.
yeah, it's like reducing an entire data set or an entire equation, like writing the equation and solving it and blah 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 blah. It's like, yeah, just here's the answer, and then here's the path to the answer. That's a very short path instead of the entire, data set that's required. Right now, Bitcoin and everything has the entire data set, and then the other thing is the entire data set is replicated across every node, which is why it grows ad infinitum. Right now, that provides us layers of security, which is why other people are looking at sharding. But you have a sharding issue where, okay, if your shards themselves exist, so they're each processing, but this shard needs something from this shard, right? Then you're going to have cross-shard communication. And if the cross-shard communication is on the same layer, you're going to still be dealing with large data sets across, and you're going to lose your scalability, right? Because you're getting scalability because this shard only has to process within this smaller subset of the entire data set, right? So with how we do it with sharding through aggregation is you have your shard, but if this shard needs something from this shard, that's actually processed on the L2 layer through the aggregated proofs. So the L2 can actually resolve that. And if, let's say, this shard has two chains in it, and they're competing against each other because you have someone attacking the network, the L2 checks and balances the L1 by essentially verifying that and choosing what's the correct chain, right? And then the L3 sends the final seal of approval down into the L2 layer. And so that releases the final thing. So I guess instead of in a Bitcoin block, it's kind of like you send the transactions out, they go to the mempool, the miner collects those transactions into the block, and then they solve the proof of work and broadcast the block. With a 3DC, it's kind of like having parallel lanes of traffic that are all doing their processing, and then they push the processing to the next layer, which, over longer time increments would be processing that, verifying their data, and then finally waiting for the final block approval. So it's kind of like building this block in real time, building the L1s and then the L2s and then the L3, and then it wraps up into a final three-dimensional block after 1 minute of time, which includes, proofs of any specific part of that. So it's kind of like a larger structure, but it's chaining in multiple dimensions, right? A blockchain is only chained one block to the next block to the next block to the next block. But in this, your shards are chained together horizontally. And then those horizontal chains are then chained again through the L2, and then they're chained forward. And then the L2 is then chained again through that entire block through the L3 that then pushes down, gets you your final root hash, which then, like a blockchain, is chained. So the three-dimensional blocks are chained together like this, right? So it still allows like the blockchain type reorganization if you have that. But the three-dimensional block that is the most valid is the one that contains the highest amount of weight and the highest amount of trust. So if I were to attack it, I couldn't just have 51% of the mining power to try to create my own transaction history. I would have to attack all of the shards. I'd have to attack all of the L2 layer, and I would have to attack all of the L3, because with Bitcoin, one hash wins, which means all that work that's been done by all the other miners is wasted. So when you can capture all of that by allowing them to just search for a share that has the highest weight, and then they submit that share at the end, yeah, you'll have to process a few thousand shares most likely. But what ends up happening is you get a higher collective weight of that block, which means even with 51% of the mining power, I still wouldn't be able to control that, because the miners actually have no control over the transaction history. They'd have to go down to the L1 layer to try to manipulate that. And then they'd have to obviously control the L2 layer to manipulate the L1 shards, right? To make things in their own favor, and then have all the mining power again. So to make a three-dimensional block that contains more trust and reputation is going to be extremely difficult for anybody to be able to pull off. And that's part of where we get the security, but we get decentralization and scalability at the same time, because you get scalability from having your shards, right, on the L1. Then you get more scalability through the aggregation. Then you get security through the collective trust and weight in all of them. And you get the decentralization through, decentralized mining and multiple shards, so that you don't have to rely on just some central validator node to be generating these blocks to, consider it valid.
Those are like 3 out of the 5, top topics right there. I think missing the UI UX. You know, when I hear a lot of like security and a lot of solutions for like security come up, I learned enough to know that that just means there's a bigger hurdle to overcome for a UI and a more user friendly experience for that interface when building on something that has so much security involved in it. It may be at a point, and I said this a few times in my podcast before, is like we may have so much security, it's so much security theater. It's almost unnecessary how much security goes into a blockchain. And I'm just, I want to divide with you on that because of how secure yours is sounding. Like, do you think that's like a justifiable statement? Like there is a point of too much security that could outweigh the UI UX utility of the secure platform?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how much of the security you offload onto the user, right? Like
Okay.
blockchain already offloads too much security onto the user, such as managing your private keys, stuff like that. But I mean, if you design an incredibly secure system, you can design the UI and UX to be completely simple, and provide, you just abstract it, automatically, right? I mean, as a good developer and as a good engineer and architect, you would design it to have those levels of security while also not putting that burden on the user, right? And that's just part of your technology. So, I mean, yes, security isn't just one aspect of it. I mean, it is just one aspect, sorry, but I mean, you need the usability aspect too. And if, you design something to be just totally secure, but like it's impossible to use, then yeah,
Yeah, but the more secure it is, I mean, maybe my question was more along the lines of like the harder it is to build something so user friendly on top of it. Like, the more locks and keys you have to
um,
your hotel, the more of a cumbersome environment it feels to a customer walking in to stay the night, even though they feel really safe. That there's like, sometimes I know you've been to a hotel where there's a key to get in, a key to get in the elevator, a key to get, off the elevator and then get into your room. And I feel really secure, but then I go home and I'm like, well, that experience for the security,
yeah. I mean, yes, there is a certain point where there is overkill on security. I mean, like if you're using like, extremely large hashes and stuff or whatever, like, I mean, there is a point where it is like slightly overkill and it's gonna like inhibit the user. But I mean, it's all about that blend of, yeah, like, make it secure enough to function, but, also be usable.
This
Because
also isn't for like cat videos on the blockchain, and that's sort of
yeah,
like segueing towards like, that true use case of this tech isn't so much for right now for, the cat videos on the blockchain, moment. It's more so for, I think, maybe replacing the fifth floor in an entire corporate, building with smart contracts,
yeah,
in a sense of, a lot of rubber stampers that people that get paid just to hit a rubber stamp and push it onto another rubber stamp, they could all be replaced with smart contracts very easily. And then that border
yeah,
of entry to, or user experience or whatever will be well worth all that security for a corporate entity to adopt, much rather than like, I
yeah,
probably won't be personally using smart contracts for things for quite some time, but I could see my Comcast probably going to be using them for my paying my bill and making sure my internet stays on. But I probably won't have a smart contract with like my landlord or my neighbor or my brothers and sisters. Like, I don't.
yeah,
I think that's sort of like the cat videos on the blockchain when it comes to like smart contract usability, where people are like, oh, "I want a smart contract with the milkman." I'm like,
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know if that's gonna be worth his
yeah,
while right now.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's certainly always a balance to strike, right? I mean, and that's what makes it really usable. And there is a massive UI UX issue in crypto as it stands right now. I mean,
Marketing too, man. That's the thing too. Like I know you had a qualm with Justin earlier, but as much as people
he's a
give him
great
shit
marketer, dude.
for it, you if
Marketing.
you and that's the thing. Nexus has an amazing product. It's just the marketing, and unfortunately, I mean this with all love,
It
sucks.
sucks. Yeah,
It
marketing sucks.
sucks. And that's
Yeah,
Bitcoin's problem too. Bitcoin's marketing sucks.
yeah,
A Doge, Litecoin, and fucking Ripple, Tron, they have the best marketing, and it's just because they have like a foundation that literally throws money at it for like loss. I don't understand the marketing at this point. It just seems like people are burning through money for like fucking mainstream news articles or something, but whatever. And I want to shout out Ernest in the chat. Much appreciate you, bro. We call them
oh,
dumb contracts when the administrative class becomes the useless class, replaced by dowels. I feel like we should start calling out the contracts that are dumb and stop
yeah,
letting them use terminology that is very misleading. And I feel and maybe you guys can vibe with me if you're watching, what you think. I think there will be a terminology class action coming from a lot of investors that were manipulated by the wrong use of terminologies by projects that did say smart contracts or that do say decentralized or do say cryptocurrency when they mean a digital token or something. Like
Yeah.
there's going to be a terminology war of class action suits over these projects that misrepresented what they truly have to offer by a
I mean,
static label.
getting back to Tron, it's a perfect example because they took Ethereum J, which is a Java version of Ethereum that was known to have incredible flaws in it, and they basically copied it, and then utilized that, and now they're claiming it with a smart contract engine. Which, like, I mean, last time I saw there was a code audit done on them. They found 50,000 critical vulnerabilities in
Well,
the Tron protocol. Yeah, which is one of the problems with copying other people's code. And then the other problem is you just really can't innovate that much. So like when we get back to Tron, Justin Sun is good at marketing, but I mean it's still a centralized approach, man. I mean, no matter how much money you have, you're only going to be able to do so much,
well, we've
right?
seen that with Vitalik too. When he died in like 2016, the market crashed, or 2017, the market crashed like 200% or maybe even more than 200% over like a fake news story because of
Yep,
that centralized point of failure. And
exactly.
yeah, people don't see that deities, like to that aspect, like Justin and Vitalik are very centralized vulnerabilities. And I think Charlie Lee did the right thing by like publicly dumping on the market and walking away financially, so he didn't have no longer like that godlike appeal. He
Yep.
stripped himself to a mortal being and walked amongst us.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's my ultimate fate too, is like become a node, and it's happening more and more and more as the community steps up more, and that's like what a truly decentralized project needs in order to succeed. Is those figureheads need to eventually go away. The creator's there for the certain period of time, but in order for it to really grow to the next level, like it needs to become its own thing.
And I guess we could wrap up on that concept, man. Like, what's Colin? What's Colin's exit moment like? And I mean this in a good way. When people say
Yeah, yeah.
exit, it always comes off like a scammy vibe. But exit is always the end goal, even if it's for a centralized or like Satoshi exited on us,
Yeah,
and we bless him for it. So how are you gonna go about your great exit?
I'll always be around. That's one thing that I'll say. If anybody needs me, I'm never gonna like disappear from Nexus. But I mean, it's kind of a slow process, I guess you can say, because there's kind of like this mentality that people have, kind of like the ICO mentality. There's still the mentality of like, oh, you're the creator, like we should listen to you so much more. I'm just like, I'm just a dev, guys. So I mean, it's kind of a consistent, slow progress of being like, hey guys, just a human, just a node. I appreciate it. I'm coding stuff, like, but yeah. So I mean, it's just, I think the mentality of the community, especially like from like 3 years ago, is a lot more community oriented and less like Colin oriented, which is good. So I mean, it's just going to take time, because there are a lot of those people that want to be the figureheads, and I mean, I've had so many people that like have wanted to be the figureheads and like tried to push me out, like I was telling you in 2018. I'm just like, I didn't even fucking want this. I didn't like go to be like, I'm gonna be the leader of a cryptocurrency, and I'm gonna be, like I never fucking said that. People were just like, we need you to lead us, and I'm like, okay, but like, I mean, yeah. So I mean, it's just gonna be a constant progression. It's not like I'm gonna be like one day, everybody, I quit, bye bye. It's just, I mean, and anybody that's listening right now, just remember, I'm just a human. I'm a dev. I'm coding. I have ideas, I have visions, but I mean, a lot of the vision of Nexus has come from other people too. Like, I mean, the design of Tritium, it wasn't that I knew everything about the world. I went and I talked to people. I, understood things about people. And like, the more that the community steps up and the more people that are able to understand the protocol and to develop like the developers are now, I mean, the better it's going to be, the stronger the project's going to be. And I mean, I'm not going to have an exit, but I will just, I mean, kind of phase out more and more and more. And like, I mean, I have other research that I'm working on as far as like my hydrogen technology and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I'm definitely going to develop the entire Tau. I'm not going to like leave that hanging because I said I would. And I'll always be around when you guys need me. But, I mean, my ultimate fate is to just become a node. And that's what's going to be the best for Nexus all in all. So, I mean, yeah, I'm just a guy, and,
Respect. Ernest, I will ask since you asked multiple times. Ernest wants to know if you would do a Nexus sponsored Splinterlands tournament. I don't know if you play or have heard of the blockchain game behind me, but
No.
there's a couple blockchain projects that put on tournaments, and if you win or enter the win and like come in a certain place, you can win their tokens. So you could like put Nexus up, and if people win the tournament, they could win some Nexus or whatever. But
That's sure.
Ernest wanted me to ask, so I asked.
Yeah, of course, Ernie. I mean, that sounds fun. Um, yeah, I'll give you a call too, Ernie. We haven't chatted for it's been like a year or something. We need to catch up. So
Yeah,
talk about
Ernest
it.
is definitely one of my more active followers. So appreciate you, Ernie.
Yeah, Ernie's awesome. Mad
All
respect.
right, man. This was an amazing chat, bro. I appreciate you and the amazing scenery. I feel like I just had like a mini vacation, and now I have to go back to reality. I turn my head. I'm like, fuck, I'm still in my room. It was a good chat, man. When will I see you again? We had a good chance to run into each
Dude,
other in Miami
whenever,
Blockchain
man.
Week, but when are you going to be at any events coming up?
Don't have any planned right now, but definitely, I mean, give me a ring or like I'll shoot you I think I have on Signal. We'll just have to keep in touch. Let me know where you're going. I mean, anything in Vegas. I'm like 4 hour drive from Vegas here. So, I mean, I think we're doing something with DEF CON in August.
Oh, that'd
Uh,
be cool. I was there last year, so it'd be nice to get back out and see what's going on.
yeah, yeah.
I met like a 10-year-old hacker that was like hacking voting machines, like legit voting
Yeah.
machines, like
Oh, dude, they're so easy to hack.
yeah. I mean, the girl was like 10 and she's like, "Oh yeah, I just watched it." And her little brother's like next to her learning and I'm like, "Oh shit." And all she had was like a Raspberry Pi, and that was like her phone, her cell phone, and a Raspberry Pi, and that's all she needed. And I think she used a pen, some kind of weird pen, to get into the machine too. It was amazing. Anyway, I'll probably end up in Vegas for that because that was a really cool conference.
Yeah, but
All
yeah,
right.
let me know whenever you're out, man. I mean, I kind of usually stay home and code, but like I'm starting to do a few more conferences and stuff lately. So anything you think is good or worthwhile, just hit me up.
All right, man. We'll do. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Much appreciated, Ernie, John, Q, Eric. Oh, Eric, how goes it? I just saw your
Up, right?
comment. How goes it, man? Yeah. And again, shout out to Mike Salvi, Nathan Hawk in the chat. Much appreciated. Ashley, thanks for tuning in. Bitcoin Jake, that dude made a Minecraft server for kids to play and just walk around in Minecraft and find Bitcoin. So shout out to Bitcoin Jake 09 for that. And Freddie, much appreciate everybody in the chat. Yep, smoke break. Absolutely. This one's for you, Ernie. We out. Have a day.
Peace and love, guys.
Shout out to the sponsors of the podcast, MonarchToken.io, the complete crypto solution. Monarch Wallet is now available for Android, iOS, and desktop devices today. Do you want to learn how to mine crypto? Well, all you have to do is visit cryptomining.tools for profitable crypto mining information today. The Divi Project, that is diviproject.org, your one-click solution for staking and masternodes. Earn cryptocurrency using social media platforms like Somi.social, SOMEE.social, New Era Social Media. Get paid to write reviews, like reviews, comment on reviews. Visit bravocoin.com and get paid to review. Available for Android and iOS devices. bravocoin.com. CoinFlip, the world's best Bitcoin ATM. Better service, better fees. Better visit coinflip.tech today. Shout out to the